Hi, Josh Keegan here, and welcome to the next episode of Aviation Corner. There's been a lot of buzz around the Australian Space Agency, my favourite little thing, and many companies are now here in Australia at least looking to launch into low Earth orbit. So I have Keith Tonkin here, the Managing Director of Aviation Projects. Welcome, Keith.
Thanks.
And we're going to be talking a little bit about my favourite topic, which is the Australian space industry and how to actually launch into orbit. So I've got my favourite beverage, which is just a lovely long black, and we're going to be talking all about space. So we're talking about launching here from Australia, and I just need to know what would be required here to actually launch from Australian soil. Is there any particular part of the regulation that would apply to launching?
For sure. In Australia, to launch a rocket, whether it's just for fun or for serious business, you need an approval, particularly for the rocket itself. And there are other rules around the payloads or the space objects that are carried. And you would need an approval or an authorization to operate a launch facility and also to launch the rocket itself.
Okay, right. Is there any particular geographical area inside Australia which is more favourable than others to actually launch a rocket from? I mean, given that we do have a lot of so-called free space, is there more favourable areas than others?
For sure. So with the larger rockets launching into space for commercial activities, the best geographical area is usually near the equator, just to take advantage of the rotational force of the Earth. And that in Australia, obviously, that's to the north of Western Australia or the north of Queensland.
Yep. And
generally, to maximise the benefit of that rotational force, it's best to launch in an easterly direction, which means to avoid overflying built-up areas or places where people get hurt. Then generally, you're looking at the east coast.
The east coast of Australia.
For sure.
Nice. All right. So this is all mainly to do with Gilmore Space, and Gilmore Space is talked about in the last couple of months, talking about launching from Australian soil. Now, Gilmore Space, for our international viewers, is based on Australia's Gold Coast in a little suburb called Pimpama. So if they wanted to launch a rocket, what would I need to do in order to actually launch that rocket?
Right. To have a rocket launch, you need authorization to operate the facility itself, the launch facility, and the rocket launch, the rocket itself needs to have an approval. And the Civil Aviation Safety Regulations Part 101, which everyone would know about, regulates drones, but also regulates rockets. And to get a rocket off the ground into space, there's an approval through that regulatory process. And then also when in space or entering space or returning from space, is a Space Activities Act which regulates those operations.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. There's also, I'm followed Gilmore Space, obviously, on Twitter, but there's also a few others that have come to my attention just recently. There's talk of a mobile launch tower and using a mobile launch tower. Is it just a matter of you find a good geographical area to go to and then launch, or how does it actually work from that point of view, especially from CASA's point of view?
Right. The launch facility itself, whether it's fixed or mobile, needs an approval under the regulations.
Right, yeah.
And the same characteristics apply in terms of public safety and the operational requirements themselves, whether it's fixed or mobile.
Oh, right, okay. Right, well, that actually relates to my next question, which is, look, I'm a massive space nut, as everybody out there already knows. So me as a space enthusiast, or anybody else who's a space enthusiast, I know the United States with SpaceX and all those sorts of things, there's a particular exclusion zone for which the general public can only get so close. What about Australia? How does it work if I want to go along? Not that I'm going to stalk, I might stalk Gilmore Space, but how close can I get?
Right. It would depend, from the starting point, I guess it depends on how close you can get, just so that you avoid any hazards associated with the operation. And then outside of that, there might be other security concerns, and it just might be in the middle of a really big place that you can't get into, like the Woomera Range in South Australia.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, Woomera, by the way, is where we launched, third nation, to build and launch our own rocket into low Earth orbit. Let me just point that out. All right. So now that I've gotten to see my launch in person, well, I may not, and I'm asking you on a very specific reason. Look, we've talked about drones before, and I know what you do with the airport operations around Australia. We've had a bit of a chat off camera about that. So is there anything, like, let's say I'm an entrepreneur and I want to launch my own rocket. I've got a few million to spend. What happens if I want to launch from Australia? Do I come to you? Do I go directly to CASA? You know, what do I do? Do you guys help out with this sort of stuff? I know you do airports, but do you do space?
Sure. The first starting point would be to talk to the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, and they're very interested to know what people are intending to do so that they can make sure they can help as much as they can. But as a regulator, they can't help solve the problems. They'll usually say, you need to come to us and tell us what you think you want to do so that it meets our requirements. And often that will mean that specialist support might be needed, whether it's drones or aircraft or rockets or anything occupying airspace. We can certainly help with that.
Well, that's good to know. So what I'll do is at the end of this, I'll actually put some links in the comments below, so that way if you need to contact Keith, well, you know, there will be all the comments. I'll also put a couple of links to the Civil Aviation Authority, Civil Aviation and Safety Authority, Regulation Part 101, and the links below as well. So thanks very much for your time today, Keith. Thanks very much for the cup of coffee. And just remember, stay caffeinated.